the attorney fees, for
Was he paying attorney? Was he paying her attorney fees?
not the attorney fees. I'm sorry, the maintenance fees alone for clearinghouse in Maryland. On the low end is $75 a month. On the high end, it's 95. So I
Just
put in the 95,
just as
and that was
just as an
that's
aside, and
$20,000 that's $20,000 18 years.
yeah, just as an aside, this is the topic for a whole nother show. If I was ever assigned attorney fees, I wouldn't fight it. I would stop going to court. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't fight the attorney's fees, but me personally, I would stop going to court. There's no way. Unfortunately, as a man, you got to get at some point. Well, first, one of the things we got to do, we got to get guys competent at going into this without an attorney. But I mean, at some point you gotta cut your losses, dog. I'm not paying another opposing counsel's attorney's fees. I'm not doing that.
Facts. I know when my ex tried that shit 2 months ago. She retained an attorney, and the first motion he pushed, he was asking for the attorney fees right off crop. Yeah. And I was like, we haven't even had a hearing. We haven't even seen it. What do you want, attorney fees to file paperwork? Get the fuck out of here. And then he filed it, I think, once or twice more. So it was a total like 2 or 3 times before we even went to our pretrial conference, which was our first real hearing. And I was like, no, we're going straight to trial, baby. We ain't playing this, and I told him in an email, if by chance I happen to have to pay your attorney fees, I'll file bankruptcy. You won't get a fucking dime from me. You'll have to go after her. So, but a lot of parents don't know that is an option you have. My mom did that actually in one of her divorces. She actually filed bankruptcy on purpose just to upset the attorney, because the attorney tried to bamboozle her. So
as kind of is what it is. Just the world that we faced with. These courts have been allowed to make merchandise off of the lives of people. This guy is an unfortunate victim. This is an extreme case. This is definitely in my top 5 worst cases that I've heard. So this is
I think he started for the divorce. He's in 2022 is when he filed. So it's only been under a year. So it went fast stream from no domestic violence except for a yelling or whatever. They had verbal, but what the fuck is that?
Just the allegation there was
you yell at your neighbors.
Nothing was proven. Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. So she went in there and it ain't like she filed charges back then and they stuck because he didn't have any criminal charges. It was just they had record of showing up there for domestic disturbance. He wasn't charged with anything. He has no criminal history. So technically what they're exasperating on the news was nothing but raised voices, and the police responded to nothing. So, what I mean?
Well, do you see this in the media's reporting on this too? The the left always tries to paint the picture of out of control gun violence, because the first thing they said, he was a legal gun owner. Like there's something suspicious about the fact that this person. Well, no, they'll mention that he had a gun, but then as a secondary thought to what they've already established, they've already spooked you with he's a gun owner. Oh, but it was a legally purchased gun. Have you noticed that? Yeah. Another thing too is, women's ability to go into court, because she would pepper him with domestic violence restraining order request every time they went to court. Same thing happened to me. The exact same thing happened to me. Every court appearance was faced with a brand new, fresh allegation.
Same here. Jesus Christ. It went from he's not being nice in the emails to what was the accusation? Last time we went accusation of rape. And that's how we had our last 2 kids apparently or something. And I was like, where did this come from? We've been in family court since 2015 and this has never ever came up. And now we're here in 2023. And you are now coming up with this drug-addled, you know what I mean? And the commissioner was eating it up.
The allegations, I mean, it's the number one thing in family law court is, criminal. It's the wrong jurisdiction. It's not wrong venue. Criminal allegations are to be heard in criminal court. That's the reason why, you know, most of this stuff goes on, because the evidentiary standard's so low. And I don't even know if it's the case that the evidentiary standard's so low, because they don't even adhere to the evidentiary standard. Because in criminal court or family law court, what happens, and this is what happened to me, the allegation is made, but then it creates such hysteria that they separate everybody, right? And by the time they get to because, you know, when I finally made the trial 3 years later, on my divorce decree, the judge says there's no history of domestic violence. None was ever proven. Mom made all these allegations, but they were all unfounded. And I'm sitting in court, Norm, like, well, what do I get something for these last 3 years?
Exactly. All this time missed.
So before, the time missed, you know, then the time missed, we're talking about graduations, proms, back to school nights, games, first dates, all the, you know, historical landmarks or milestones. For parents and their children. It's priceless what they take away from people. So once again, I mean, I can't, you kind of, I mean, it's no mystery why this stuff is starting to happen. There's no mystery. You can't take everything from a person who has nothing to lose is the most dangerous person in the world.
And what am I working for? You got me out here doing slave wages at a job that I don't like, you know, chasing a dream that isn't mine, that's somebody else's dream, working for slave wages, you know what I mean? And then you're going to come and tell me that I'm not making enough money to even, you know, or I don't have enough time on my hands with the amount of money I make to support 2 households and be with my kids full time. So now I have to give up my kids full time and support a second household with income that I don't have. So you're expecting me now to visit with my kids from a hotel because I can't afford 2 houses.
And that part of the equation is never discussed or mentioned in family law court. And that part being that, you know, the imbalance that's created on one household, 90% of the time, the fathers. Now he has to, instead of supporting one household, he's got to support 2. Right. So, I mean,
whereas the woman, when she leaves, she jumps into the pants of another man who's already got it together. Yeah. And then she has her part-time or her full-time job. So she doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah. Yep. And this also makes second marriage cumbersome, difficult, you know, whatever word you want to use, for a person assigned alimony or both receiving and assigned, because if you remarry, right, in California at least, it waives your right to receive alimony. And if you remarry, your now new spouse's income is going to be calculated as part of your income for what your child support order is going to be. What is that, bro? This is, how did a group of people sit in a room and hear this being said and vote, yes, this is fair, this is legislation that we're going to enact statewide? How did a group of people sit in a room and vote for this?
It didn't happen all at one shot. It's like microaggression, like racism. It's generationally, new people come into power and they want to put their mark on legislation, or they want to put their mark in the history books and said they did this. And even though they're not fully educated or aware of what the ripple effect is, they just want to be in the history book. And let's see where the chips, you know, chips drop. Just like right now in the whole political theater we have right now, it doesn't matter how toxic Matt Gaetz or or any of the Democrats are or whatever. It doesn't matter how toxic anybody is. It's all about that click. Yeah. They want that money to come in, you know, from their donors. And so they're like, look at me, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, you know, donate to me so I can keep, you know, making the hype and, you know, putting attention on, you know, where it needs to go or where you think it needs to be. And it's the same thing with mothers in court. They do the same toxic bullshit where they throw the chips in the air and they're rape and abuse and yelling and financial abuse and, you know, or hostage or whatever it is. And then the judge looks at the father and is like, oh, you want to hold her financially hostage? Well, let's do that to you now. Yeah. See how you like it.
Yep.
And that may not even be the case.
Were there any other factoids that I missed on this? What else
So
went on.
I didn't like. I was so pissed off about the situation that
It's
I didn't even
infuriating.
look into
I
the
get that.
judge.
It's hard to. I couldn't watch but a couple minutes. I was like, this is it's infuriating.
Yeah, because they're on the news. That's all they talk about. Oh, his wife. And first of all, the wife and the son didn't see the shooting. They heard it, but they didn't see it.
Oh, you talking
So
about the
when they're on the news talking about, oh, they were in
judge?
the, they were home. Yeah, they were home, but they didn't come out and see it happen or whatever.
I don't know. I mean, you're talking about the judge. Your dad and your husband murders people for a living, bro.
That part murders families.
The house that you live in is paid for with blood money.
Now, the other thing that you probably missed too is that Pedro is listed as his ethnicity as being white all throughout this court order.
Okay.
All throughout this whole his even on his FBI wanted poster, it lists him as being white.
Okay.
So I'm curious to know because his wife, like I said, her whole Facebook page is in Spanish.
Well, she looked. Well, you have white, like the Argentinians. They're more fair-skinned. What's his nationality though?
Yeah.
What's
Well,
his
it's like Ted Cruz, in Texas. Ted Cruz, the senator.
Actual Spaniards consider themselves white.
Yeah.
Actual people from Spain.
Well, it's because they're from Europe. Yeah.
So
we don't have that slave blood in them, that island blood.
Yeah. So I mean, on that tip, I'm not really tripping. I mean, he could be anywhere by now. It's been a couple days. He could be anywhere.
Well, and that's probably the other thing that you missed too. So when I looked up his background, the wife specifically has family in Florida, a lot of family in Florida. And he has apparently ties to New York, and I saw Texas, but I'm not fully for sure for Texas, but that puts you right there at the border. You know what I mean? And I don't know what nationality he is from, if he's from Honduras or Guatemala or Cuba or whatever, as far as his Hispanic nationality. But not all Spanish is the same Spanish where you go. So he's going to stick out unless he goes back to where his native tongue is from. Because a Puerto Rican is going to stick out in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Well, I mean, but, he's, I don't know. This is a tough situation. And it's just, it's frustrating to see the media, not even take any sort of ownership or address the situation as it truly is.
They won't. It would go against the establishment, and the system is so big now that it's like being a politician who can't say I'm sorry because it doesn't do them any good in the future because it'll be used against them.
I always take a different tack. I believe that it's a house of cards, bro. It's I think it would take very little to make I'll put it like this: men could get everything that we wanted overnight, in my opinion. It's a house of cards. It's built on a facade. Men, we've all been deceived and walking around in a fog, and it simply would just take a matter of of an awakening of sorts. A big story like this. I really believe that like just proper exposure in the media, which is proof, the media is not doing its job. And I believe that a lot of whatever the number is that they say that family law makes, and you can probably throw in the money that is at in the reach of Title 4D child support, the prison industrial complex is part of all this, and part of the money that they make gets funneled back to the media to not report it.
It's called PR.
No, they pay the media to not report it. I don't even know if that's necessarily PR. They just,
it's public relations. They don't want the system to look bad, so they have to invest something back into the media. You know what I mean? So that the message the propaganda is put out. The system system's not broken.
I would not be surprised that at least half of their, I hate to say income, but it is what it is. Half of their income is dedicated as towards media suppression. because that's in my opinion, that is the biggest linchpin. It's just proper exposure. This stuff would get turned upside down overnight. We'd get everything we want overnight.
I can't disagree with that. I mean, the evidence is there. I mean, as soon as it's like you've never hear of a judge doing anything wrong unless it's in the courtroom and they are like cussing at, you know what I mean? Or they get up, like one case where they got up and fought an attorney.
Didn't you do a story on a black judge somewhere, the black lady that was acting like a horse's ass somewhere?
With her son?
I think so.
The man-child, yeah, that one's still getting views. Yeah, the man-child one. Matter of fact, check it up in the comments, you know, or whatever. But as far as the, or I'll put the link for that video. Yeah, it was the man-child one. I can't remember what the judge's name was, but yeah, she had let her son had an AK in the house, and he kept letting his on-off and on-again girlfriend stay with him. And the mom told him she can't stay in this family house because, you know, it was like their second home. And she was letting him stay there. And she had moved her in anyway with her fucking dog and a kid. And the dog was barking and they got into some kind of drunken argument. And he pulled out the AK and she locked herself in the room. And he ended up firing that AK through the door.
Well, I mean, did we talk about did this judge say why he did what he did though? I haven't seen any of that. I hope
you're talking about the man-child?
No, I'm talking about Pedro. What's his last name?
Argote.
Pedro Argote. Did the judge get into why this was a pretty, I mean, I'd like to see a panel too of other judges, you know, like, because Judge, what was that female TV judge? She's had a lot of videos online advocating for changes, and she doesn't have a very high regard for family law judges. She had, was it Judge Judy? She had said that the family law judges, she had called them quote unquote the bottom of the barrel. So she speaks very disparagingly of family law judges, but that circuit down there in Maryland, they need to be called to task on why was he allowed to enter that order.
Well, that's what Eric's fighting for down there with Winning Strategies. He's trying to get it on the legislative level. He's been doing that for years, trying to get change as far as the criminality of the child support issue. And
well, I mean, I'm just speaking solely on the level of
personal.
No, the judge, that entire circuit, that entire office down there. Are you handing out orders like this with no proof of nothing? No criminal convictions, nothing. You gave that man the most severe penalty.
But think about the logic of it though. Because he took the route that he took, he didn't try to appeal, he didn't try to go the long route and spend the money and and do it let's say the legitimate way.
I mean, that's not realistic for most people.
And I agree 100%, but not everybody's cut the same, because when just 2 months ago, my ex was saying rape and all this stuff, but mine was, mine's not as, I have full custody of my kids, and this was a commissioner giving her, a little bit of wiggle room on an email claiming domestic violence or whatever. But instead of going all out, I just filed an appeal. And it's a $10,000 appeal, but I got it done one way or another. And I don't have 10K to throw around, but I do have skills, and I was able to retain an attorney and give him a commercial worth $10,000, and I got it done. And I'll show you guys the commercial here in a little bit. Here, I just finished it over the weekend, and I got to give it to him.
I mean, but that's not always an avenue for the majority of people. I mean, a lot of people
and I agree 100%. I agree, but if you've got the money, because he already had an attorney to file for the divorce, and and remember, we were looking at the link. You sent me that link yesterday with and I looked it up, and he had a bunch of civil stuff with Midland Credit. I think he had a couple thousand, I think it was like $7,000, $8,000 worth of credit. So if he was able to manage bad debt, you know what I mean? And I mean, he wasn't a slouch with his finances. And that's what I want to say. And he seems like the type of person, the caliber of person, like You know the person that in the 50s, in the 1950s, when the stock market crashed, and you had all these people that were jumping off buildings because they thought life was over and they didn't know how to start it, and make their millions again. He seems like that type of guy who can't take a loss. You know what I mean? And it felt like that loss was just too great for him, and he snapped. And instead of offing himself, he went another route, and what he saw was the course of his problem. Instead of seeing himself as the problem in one capacity, as far as getting along with his ex, he took it out on the judge. Was he right? Did he have purpose for it? We don't know. But the only way we would know, coming full circle, what I'm about to say, is if he would have appealed it and got the transcripts, just like I did with this fucking commissioner. And we're going to see how savvy and sassy he was as far as microaggression and racism or whatever it was that triggered him to throw the book at Pedro, or hang Pedro, as far as his kids.
Well, I mean, the whole thing, I think, hinges upon the fact that criminal allegations, they do not need to be heard in family law court. The allegations of domestic violence and child abuse need to be first properly adjudicated in criminal court, and then a family law judge will only make his decision based off of what has already been determined across the street in criminal court. Okay. So
and that's why I got to give credit to my current judge. That's exactly what he did versus the commissioner, because I went in there with evidence, the same evidence on both the same exhibits. And the difference is that the family court judge listened and gave me, even though my time was cut short because of her loud, her excessive talking, I still was able to get the point across and show my evidence, which was weighed in. Whereas the commissioner was just one-sided with her lack of evidence and her not even having exhibits. He let her read emails, and all she was doing was kind of cherry picking what she wanted to read, and he was letting that slide. So when I had mentioned the unorthodox, he didn't know I was a paralegal until the end, and when he found out I was a paralegal, he didn't like what I had to say about his unorthodox measures as far as not presenting evidence or the exhibits, and his staff said the same thing. And they were like, how are we supposed to file this if there's no exhibits? And his exact words, which I'll get in the appeal and I'll show you here in a future podcast, he said, we'll worry about that in the appeal. So
it's crazy, bro. This is crazy.
But let's wrap this up, man. I'm glad you called in. I love it when you tap in and we can bounce ideas off each other, man. I appreciate you calling in.
All right, big dog.
Man, I'll tap in with you later, though.
I'll be in touch. Yep.
All right. Peace.